Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Mielle Fox. How are you today, Mielle?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, wonderful.
So good.
And yes, I am honored to have you on the show. I'm excited for our conversation today. Mielle, you are a self-proclaimed multifaceted expression of your soul. And this is so fascinating to me. I can't wait to hear more about this. But also, you're a writer, you are an EFT practitioner, and you have a podcast as well. So tell us about it. I want to hear what it means to be a multifaceted expression of your soul, and also talk about a mission statement that you have, and that is just a really powerful statement. In this lifetime, share awareness and channel love to shift the collective one heart at a time. Mielle, please tell us, what does this mean?
What does all this mean? Can you please decipher this? First of all, thank you so much for having such a joy. I love coming on and sharing what I feel strongly about, telling a few stories, because who doesn't love a good story? And just having a great conversation. So I really appreciate the space to go down the road, the rabbit hole, so to speak, of some of these questions. So I call myself a multifaceted expression of my soul, because a lot of people say, so what do you do? Oh, so what do you do? So what's your career? So what line of work are you in? Like all the usual questions. And I think to myself, well, that's all well and good. I can tell you what I do, but that's not who I be. Like who I am at my deepest space isn't necessarily the things that I do. So, like many of us in healing circles or other areas where we're trying to express some overall universal message, I have a toolkit. I've got modalities. I've got lots of wisdom, lots of years of experience, lots of different career paths, all the things. But those are the things that I physically do, not necessarily who and what and how my soul chooses to express. So that's why I wrote a multifaceted expression of my soul, because I've done a little everything. And some of the things that I do, people look at me like, I can't believe you actually do those things. Well, I do. And so that's why I think it's really kind of a chuckle. And it was very funny because when you said I'm a writer, I heard with my headphones on, oh, you're a rider. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's the first person who's ever acknowledged that I actually ride horses. I think this is hilarious. And then I realized, oh no, she meant you write, as in you co-authored a book, which I did. So, I mean, again, it's not necessarily all the things. So I do both. I ride horses and I write books. I mean, it's a little bit of everything. I have a long, still ongoing career in oral health care. So that is actually what I do with the majority of my time. I live on a farm with horses, obviously. I live on a farm with horses, and so I spend a lot of time there. And when I'm not doing that, I love to dip my toe in the pond of advanced numerology and aligned wellness coaching for people, which is really an expression of how the podcast came to be. And that in itself is kind of another funny story. So I will let you ask me what you want to ask me, because I've basically just told you like 5 different stories we could go through. So you tell me which one you want to hear, and everybody get their popcorn ready, because it's going to be good. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mielle, for starting us out with that, kind of explanation of what that means. And I agree with you. So often we just say what we do, right? I work in data entry, or I'm a mother and, I do this job, whatever it is, but that doesn't really fully explain all that we are as, humans. And so thank you for kind of bringing that up and sharing that with us, as I think it's true. We need to kind of remember we are here to be, not necessarily to do, but that's a topic for another day. Anyway, and you mentioned about riding, horse riding. And yes, absolutely. I want to talk about this because it plays a significant role in the work that you do and your life. So why don't you tell us, how did that come to be? Did you start riding as a child, or did this develop later on for you?
So I am what's called the adult rider. So I actually started being involved with horses in my mid 30s. So I'll give you the quick up to the mid 30s. So like every little girl, mommy, I want a pony, mommy, I want to ride horses, mommy, the whole thing. Not available to me as a child. Just wasn't going to be part of the experience. So off you go to school and college and university and incur student debt and get a job and start your career. And I decided, man, I was so burnt out. I just needed to get a little bit of a getaway. So I took myself on a little 3-day vacation to a spa retreat kind of place. It was new on the map. And one of the available excursions to the guests was to spend time with some horses and to learn how your energy and your body language could influence how the horse would reflect that back to you. So this is back in the early, oh my gosh, I'm going to tell you how old I am in a minute. Okay, this was in the early 90s. So it was sort of early on in this like energetic exchange conversation that seems very commonplace today, but back then really wasn't. So off I go on my little 3-day journey, and it was like, wow. I mean, the light bulb went on, and I was like, holy Hannah. And back came my little kid in her adult body. It was like, come hell or high water, I'm gonna go get me horseback riding lessons. And this is the thing. So that snowballed into where I am now, which is on a farm with several, we'll keep it at several horses, kind of like M&Ms. You can't just have one. So, I have me a little handful of M&Ms, so to speak. And it had gone from originally of, oh, I want to ride horses, to where I suddenly realized, oh, this isn't really about riding. This is really about connection. This is really about love. This is really about two souls exchanging a conversation through how we interact with one another. And this went on and on and on for years. And I still hadn't quite made the link, like, oh my gosh, this is really my pathway to understanding who I really am. So the horses have been from my mid 30s to now, and I'll let you know I'm in my 60s. So it's been a long time, and they are pivotal for me personally to really up my personal transformation game for myself. And the reason is, a horse is pure, authentic, genuine, doesn't hold anything back, is really a momentful, in the moment, energetic being. Their heart resonance is massive compared to human heart resonance, their electromagnetic field. And so anybody who doesn't know me already, I'm super geeky. I'm really sciencey. I'm really spiritual. So I'm like that bridge between science and spirit and the whole shebang. So the amazing piece of horses is that if you want to know where you need to work on yourself, you just go spend a little time with them, and it will be reflected to you, mirrored to you. It's so directly there, you cannot not see it. And so some of what I do now is I actually use my experiences that I have with my herd as a way to convey awareness for other people, information for other people, through what I know and what I have learned with them. And so they are a pivotal piece for myself personally, and I sort of weave them a little bit into how do I present information for other people as well. So that's kind of the horse story. And for anybody I will tell you my personal thing. I view all of us here as souls spending time in a human body in Earth School. So we're here to try it all out, to experience it all of it, the up, the down, the good, the bad, the in between, all the feelings, all the emotions, everything. And I feel that at our very deepest core essence, we are just as a horses with this wild, expansive, free, joyous, blissful, peaceful, serene place, which is how they would normally be until we sort of muck them up a little bit. And that's how we souls in a human body are the same way till we kind of get a little mucked up along the way. and then we spend most of our lifetime trying to unmuck. But that's how I see things, as mirrors and reflections, basically. Yeah,
Mm. Oh, that's
it's fun.
fantastic. Thank you.
It's good.
Yeah, super cool. And really, I agree with you. I think horses are amazing, and the the work that you can do on yourself, as you just shared, when you're, having that time with these magnificent creatures. And yeah, it's tremendous. I love it. And just a side note, where we are in, the Phoenix area, we've got the Salt River, and we have wild horses still in the area. And so we just happened to be on the river over the weekend, the holiday weekend, and there was a couple wild horses just drinking right at the edge of the river, and it is so amazing to see them just still
It
wild like
is.
that. It's tremendous. Yeah.
It's tremendous. And if
Yeah.
even if you're not actually having the interaction with them, if, like, for you, just to be the observer, to sit on that bank and just watch them and
Yeah.
see how do they interact with one another, how do they, their whole behavioral system, their energetic exchange. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's really one of the most amazing things you can be a part of. And it's such a gift if you happen to have the capacity to be involved with that. It's really pretty amazing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree. And I've had an opportunity to, work with horses in this sort of self-care healing kind of, manner. So I have experience in both ways. So it was so cool, to see the wild horses, and I just can't get over it. It's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about how your mission statement that we began the episode with, how does that influence the work that you're doing across the different modalities? And we can touch a little bit on the EFT if you'd
Mhm.
like, and some of the other things that you do when you're, working with yourself and with other people.
Sure. So at the end of the day, to pare down, what do I really believe in? I really believe that each of us is here to live in our divine right of a joyful expression in this lifetime, having this journey. And there are many of us, myself included, everybody's a work in progress, because if you finally get to the end of your progression, you've left Earth. So the idea is, like, don't be in a big old hurry to get to the destination. Just enjoy the ride, because this is it. So, I find that in the journey, in the ride, in the treasure hunt is the way I really view life. Like, I get up every day like, oh, can't believe what might happen today. It's fascinating depending on how you choose to perceive it. And the bottom line is that in order to really feel good about what goes on around you, you've got to get right inside you first. And so my phrase that I tend to tell myself is, if get right within before you get right out there. And it's a reflection. Again, it's all about reflections and mirrors. And you run into people in your lifetime who are there to serve as either a reflection of something that you need to work on within yourself, or you are there for them to reflect something that perhaps they need within themselves. And so, to me, our purpose, if you want to call it that, here in this journey, is that we're either the student or the teacher. We're either giving a lesson or getting a lesson. And regardless of what that is. And at the end of the day, if you can open yourself to be in a state of profound receivership, like, okay, I'm curious, I'm interested to see how else might I perceive the situation. It opens an enormous pathway for possibility, for anything, for everything, for whatever you choose to desire. Because the truth is, the way you move through your world and what your life looks like is a projection of what you choose it to look like. So if you don't like the movie you're watching, change your channel, change what you're projecting, and you will change what shows up. I mean, that's really kind of the nutshell of it. What I honestly, truly believe or feel is, I don't want to call it an obstacle, because I don't think it's an obstacle. I'm going to call it a little bit of a challenge, is that what gets in our way of really feeling like, hey, we're doing the thing, is many people tend to base a lot of who they are and how they move through the world on a lot of what's around them as opposed to what's within them. And you have to have both. I mean, you have to have both. That's what we're here for. We're here for the ride. We're here for the journey. We're here for the experience. We're also here for the connection in the community. Otherwise, we wouldn't be set up the way we're set up. I mean, it's common sense. So, the difficulty with the way the world is currently, geographically, politically, theologically, all of the things, is that for a long time it pushed us into more of separation and isolation. COVID didn't help us into this really everybody separate and everybody's an island and don't ask for help. That is not the way we're truly meant to be. We're truly meant to be in connection, in community. And I also believe that we're all here, truthfully, as a divine spark of love. That's my personal belief. Believe it or not, whatever. That's me. That's the truth of it, which means that we have a little piece of that. We are all the same. So it doesn't matter what you look like. I don't care what your business is. I don't care where you live. The bottom line is we're all connected through that same divine spark of love. That's it. And so if we can return home, walk home to our heart space, I don't mean like, your little organ. I mean like your heart space. Then yeah, you can tap right into that. And since we're all connected, that's what I mean by, and you will shift the collective one heart at a time. It's like that ripple effect story. Drop the pebble in the pond and watch the ripples expand. Get right within yourself, really understand who you really are, your deepest essence, no judging, no attachment, compassion, a lot of all the compassion work, the grace work, the forgiveness work, all the things, because truthfully, every human comes out a little banged up. That's what we're here for. We're actually intentionally supposed to get a little banged up on the ride. It's just the way it is. But if you can work through that and walk yourself home, and you don't walk yourself home by yourself. That's why you have all these other people in the world, because some people are here to walk part of your journey with you, not the whole journey, but part of it. And then you'll wave goodbye. And then somebody else will step in and walk a little more of your journey. And you're going to do it for somebody else. So, truthfully, we're all walking each other back home to the connectedness of our heart. I mean, that's really the thing. Yeah. And there's
Oh my
lots of ways
gosh.
to hear the message,
Yeah. Oh
right?
yeah, Mielle, this is
Yeah.
fantastic. I love this. There's so much in what you said that I absolutely agree with. And I think when specifically when you're talking about perspective and the way that we're looking at situations, and a lot of times why did this happen to me? And changing that perspective and thought around why is this happening for me? And the
For
idea
me.
yeah, of what is occurring here that's transformational for me if I choose to see it that way, and where is it leading me to if I'm looking at it as an opportunity instead of some other negative mindset pattern. So I mean, so much in there, fantastic, and the connection that we have with other people, and that we do serve a purpose for others and they for us in this journey that we're taking together. And I love that so much. And so thank you for sharing that again
Sure.
with us now. That was awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. And so let's talk about your podcast, because a lot of this so it's the energy of the untamed heart is the name of your
Mhm.
show. And so tell us what we would find if we were to listen in on some episodes.
Sure. Sure. So the podcast, again, this is how I roll. It's not even a year old. I don't know when this will be released, but I started this podcast last November, and this is going to be really hard for folks to believe, but I'm a little old school. I'm a little techie challenged sometimes, and I had never heard of a podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was. No clue. And across my little Facebook feed came like 4-day free workshop to do podcasts. I'm like, podcast, what is this? And so I thought, I got a little time. So I clicked it and I'm like, oh my God, this is a platform that I can like get on and talk about whatever and people can listen to this. I was like dumbfounded. I'm thinking, this is brilliant. How brilliant is this? Of course, it's been around for years, but I don't spend much time. When you run a farm, you don't spend a lot of time on social media, really. So I was clueless. But anyhow, I'm like, well, I want to do this, just like a little kid. I want to do this, and that was it. I want to do this. So I took the little class and I'm like, what the heck? I could do this. So I did. And that's how it was birthed. And again, my message is I really feel that when we get right with ourselves and we really understand that our experiences are here for our betterment, if we choose that. And now I'm not saying ignore all the bad stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, live in love and light and it's all whoopee doopie, because it isn't. Let's be real, it's not. There is a reason that you have good days and bad days, good feelings and bad feelings, anger and love. There's a reason you have all these things. You're not supposed to ignore half of the bucket, right? You're supposed to sit with that, acknowledge it, but understand that it doesn't necessarily need to be that. And that if you just give yourself some time in there and think about it for a second and feel with your heart, could this be another way? Is there something I could be learning out of this? Is there maybe something else? And I'll tell you why that curiosity is really key. I You probably hear this from a bunch of your guests, and I hear it from my guests, so I don't feel badly just opening up and sharing and saying, "Hey, here's how it goes." The reality is, through sharing our personal stories, good and bad, this is the way that we share our soul being with other beings so that they feel seen, so that they feel heard, so that they don't feel like, oh my God, I'm doing this whole thing by myself and I'm so alone and I'm unsupported, and all the things that people either don't say or do say. And when we can get on a platform and share our stories, it's a validation of who we are as humans in this journey, in this lifetime, doing the thing. And a lot of what I discuss on the podcast is the myriad of ways that our human is able to receive messages from whatever one chooses to believe in beyond us, because truth is, it ain't just us. And I call that, you can call it love language, you can call it the language of energy, whatever you want to choose to call that, but it comes through to everybody in a way that that individual can respond. For some people, it's dance. For some people, it's numbers. For some people, it's planets. For some people, it's cooking. For some people, it's singing. I don't know. It's whatever it is, it's energy. And that is the language through which they are able to receive what they need to receive. And by doing so, it is what allows you to tap back into the freeness of the being of who you were when you first showed up before you started getting dinged up. Because you come here undinged, and then you get kind of dinged up, truthfully, in a whole bunch of ways. I did child of parents from war, child of addiction, child of, very strict upbringing, lost several family members very acutely. So, I don't come without a few dings and bangs, but you can look at it a couple different ways. Does it stink in the moment? Yeah, it does. Sure, it does. Do you grieve? Yeah, you do. Of course you do. But there is purpose and value to all those experiences. And if you're willing to be open, then kind of that old saying of like the world is your oyster. It's so true. If you can dream it, you can create it. You can have it. If you want to have joy, then choose joy. Sort of like you go to the ice cream shop. You want chocolate, choose chocolate. You want peppermint, choose peppermint. You want happy, choose happy. I'm not saying ignore everything else, but choose. How do you want to move through your day? I mean, it's a choice. Yeah.
Yeah, Mielle, that's fantastic. And I agree. I think we cannot just push aside the feelings that we're having or
Mm-mm.
ignore that, things maybe are negative, difficult, that's going to happen. But, recognizing that we can choose how much time we're going to spend focusing on those things versus on, the choice of joy and happiness and like that, and not ignore our feelings or bury our feelings. That's not what we're talking about here. But you're right, we do have a choice. So I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Um, so then as an EFT practitioner, first of all, let's share with the audience what EFT stands
Sure.
for and
Yeah.
what it is, and then share with us kind of how you're using that. And also you mentioned numerology before. So let's talk a little bit about that as well and how you're using all of
Sure.
that in your life and in helping others.
All of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So, again, how did I come across these things? I mean, I feel there are really truly no coincidences. I think everything sort of shows up the way it's meant to show up, when it's meant to show up, how it's meant to show up. I like, the word everybody likes to use is divine timing, or the phrase. And I believe that to be so. I may not have been ready 10 years ago, ready, whenever I took the training in the class. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It has a very, very long history. It is a modality that has been used for a very long time, that is a combination of verbal talking through some event of some kind, combined with tapping on very specific energetic meridian points in the human body. So I'm just going to back it up a little bit, because I realize for some people, they're like, what the hoo does that mean? So, if you believe that everything is energy, and the reality is it can physically be proven that everything is actually 99.999% energy and 0.0001 with a few extra numbers on the end of particulate matter. What does that really mean? To just kind of make it super simple. Old school thinking was what you saw on the outside was what determined happened on the inside. And the newer thinking, or the proven thinking, thank you, Einstein, is what we call quantum theory, which basically means that energy exists like everywhere, everywhere. Translation: if everything is energy and energy exists everywhere, and it's in what we call waveform, meaning you don't really see it like a particulate matter, it only becomes the thing when you collapse the wave and focus on the thing, and then it becomes what you project as your reality. So that's the nutshell there. But what that means, if you really think about it, if everything is energy, then it means, and that includes your emotions and your thoughts and your feelings and everything, it's sitting in energy. The energy is sitting in your cellular physical body being, which means that you carry in your human body at all levels, cellular, organ, muscle, the whole nine yards, everything, your skin, all of it is carrying energy. So that means you are able to utilize different techniques to tap into the energy, basically, and move it or shift it or change it. And so a meridian represents a point, or a connection, or a, oh, think of it like a GPS ping point, kind of, on the body, that if you physically tap on it, combined with as you're processing and verbalizing something, the change and the shift in your somatic nervous system, meaning, are you in the quieter side of your nervous system, which is harmonic and balanced and helps keep things kind of copacetic, or are you in the jacked up side of your nervous system, which is like, oh my God, I'm going to die? Right. So we have these two major, there's a few other ones in there, but your two big ones are what we refer to as your fight or flight, which is like, oh my God, I'm going to die. The tiger's going to eat me, or, T-Rex or whatever. And then there's the other side of your nervous system, which is your quieter. It really speaks more to your heart. It speaks more to your higher self, your intuition. It is the place that we would all love to be. But here's the reality: nobody stays in one or the other 24/7. To make it just a little bit more complex, when you're in one or the other, your body's pumping out a pile of chemicals for you, which is its job. So the use of something like EFT is, it is a modality that allows you to re-regulate or shift the dysregulation of your nervous system expression. So when you're anxious, when you're fearful, when you're worried, when you're depressed, when you're afraid of XYZ happening, those are all the save my butt side of your nervous system. EFT allows you to change that and shift that and put you into the side of your body where you can actually think about what you want to do, feel about what you want to do, and make a response versus a reaction, which is a big, big difference. So there's lots of different levels that people will use EFT for. Certainly, if somebody has some really significant trauma, then they should be seeing somebody who has a really, either an advanced certification, or a hired medical professional or whatever. But for many situations, it really helps people. It helps people to reprogram the neuron pathway, basically. So I'm sure you, as you well know, your brain likes routine. It likes patterns. It learns quickly, and it Doesn't mean it can't unlearn. It just means it needs to be offered an opportunity to rearrange the components of the pattern in a way that become the new pattern. It's like when they tell you, oh, you got to do your exercise program for 30 days before it becomes a habit. Oh, you've got to, I don't know, you got to drink 7 glasses of water for a month before it becomes your habit. Like whatever that is, if you take that phrase, what are they saying? You have to do something repetitively in order for your brain to recognize it as this is my normal. So if you don't like the thing you were doing, reprogram it, change it. You just got to do it. Yeah. So this
Oh,
is what
that's
EFT does.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And thank you so much for going into that level of detail with us, explaining it, because I think many people don't have any idea of what that is and how helpful that can be for a lot of people. And yes, let's reiterate, if you have significant trauma and experiences, you should be seeing absolutely a professional to help you with that, and or practitioner at a super well-trained level. They really know what they're doing to work with. Absolutely. But yeah, I think this is so fascinating because it opens up opportunity to change things that maybe you thought you weren't able to change before. And so I just find it incredibly fascinating. And so let's talk about numerology now, and how that plays into what you're doing.
Okay. I just got to tell you, I love this because my two things I love to talk about are horses, coming home to your heart, and numerology. My three things. Sorry.
Okay.
I mean, it's just like that's my jam. Okay. So for me, my energy language that comes naturally for me that I really love to talk about is numerology. And here's why. Everybody is uniquely, divinely coded when they show up on Earth. There's lots of us that may show up on Earth on the same date of birth, but we are all extremely unique in how we move through the world. So, numerology is basically the science of transformation. And back in the day of Pythagoras, I don't know if you remember your algebra and geometry from school, but remember that dude Pythagoras? He was like a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So he was like, father of mathematics, yada yada. And he determined that there were 7 musical notes and that there was a measurable vibration frequency within each of these musical notes, which is the truth, right? That's why one goes la la and one goes blah blah, right? So he started there and then he did his science, which I don't know the deets on that, but discovered that, oh, lo and behold, numbers hold frequency as well. Numbers hold energy. And there's an analogy with numbers connected to planetary movement as well, but that's another story for another day. We'll just leave it at numbers. So numbers actually hold energy, and it's the science of transformation. And what happens is when you know your birth date, you also have there's a couple advanced forecasting numerology and basic numerology. I'll just give you the quickie overview. But these numbers, this coded information from when you were born, is literally a blueprint of the potential, not necessarily, or the capacity, not necessarily. It's not a psychic reading. It's not like, here, this is going to happen on, Monday the 23rd in 2025. It is literally a potential map of what your soul is here to experience in a given window of time. And it can be broken down by months, years, lifetimes, the whole 9 yards. Based on that information, you have energetic influences, which things that some people say, for example, I was always told as a kid, man, you talk a lot. I know I talk a lot. But you know what? When as a kid, I thought that was bad because I was always being told, like, hey, we don't want to hear from you, be quiet, right? So you think, oh my gosh, that's a bad thing. It turns out, based on my chart, which I didn't know as a child, but I know now as an adult, I am coded in such a way that my influence, this is part of it. This is my capacity for giving back and expressing through my voice, through my ideas, through how I share story. This is a piece of my gift of how do I come forward with my message of living life and purpose that everybody's connected in the whole thing. So numerology gives you different perspectives and different versions of your ultimate soul truth. And when I say different, it's because as a human, everybody has free will and choice. So it doesn't make a hoot what's sitting on your chart. If you as a human decide that you're going to do a certain thing, whatever, make a choice, live a certain way, whatever the thing is, I don't care what your chart tells you because you're using your human free will and choice to choose a pathway. That being said, it is uncanny how accurate numerology is. I mean, it's really uncanny. And it goes so far as there's personal numerology, which is specific to you or specific to me or whomever. And then there's also what we call universal energies, which are the energies of everything around us, things that are not connected directly to you. And you can actually navigate challenges in your life based on divine timing cycles, based on numerology of the day, week, month, based on, I mean, it's really sort of, it's a little bit like if I said to you, hey, Des, it's going to be, I realize in Arizona this isn't true, but let's say it is. It's, you got 80% chance of rain today. You better put an umbrella in the car. Now your free will and choice is either poo poo on you, I'm not putting an umbrella in my car. That's your free will and choice. Or, oh my gosh, 80% chance of rain. I'm going to put it in the car just in case so I am prepared. And whether it does or doesn't rain, it doesn't matter. So that's what forecasted numerology can do. It gives you an idea of how could I leverage knowing what the energy might be, knowing what it represents or offers me the possibility for, how can I leverage that to make the most or the best or the whatever of my goal, my vision, my dream, my day, my whatever you want. So I got to think how to say this. I use it as a tool in my back pocket because it helps me to understand a client's needs better. It helps me to help a client understand why do they tend to fall into certain patterns? Why do they tend to default to certain behaviors? How do they understand to process certain things in their body because they tend to be weighted in one way over another? There's so much information sitting in somebody's chart. It's really cool. It's like opening the jack in the box and winning the big prize. It's like, oh my gosh, what's in here? It's so good.
That's so
Yeah.
cool, Mielle. I love it. Thank you. And it's so
Yeah.
interesting to me because again, it's energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Music, the numbers, we are everything around us is energy. And so
Energy.
it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's super
Like sound
interesting. And
healing.
yes, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah.
All of it. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. And this idea of numerology in this way is so interesting. Like I've never explored this avenue before. So super interesting and like piquing my curiosity about this. I love the idea that it gives you just kind of a general idea of some potential possibility, and then you have a choice of how you're going to, decide following, not following, going a different way, whatever. So very
Yeah.
cool.
It's good
All
stuff.
right. It
And
is
and
for
at the
sure.
end, this is an analogy many people have heard. There are many streams and rivers, estuaries, whatnot, that will all take you ultimately to the ocean. The ocean being what are you returning home to? And there are lots of different pathways to get there. So there isn't any one magic, you got to do it this way or that way, which is the beauty of energy. I mean, it's just so brilliant that it shows up in so many different ways that it's almost like, V8 moment. Like, how could you not get it when it shows up? Like, pick your way. What do you want? You want astrology, you want numerology, you want dance, you want sound, you want food. I mean, you know what I mean? There's just, you want horses. Like, how do you not get the message? It's really pretty fun. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's
so
such a
good.
great analogy. The idea of it doesn't just have to be, this raging river that gets you back to the ocean. That's the only way you can go. There's, like you said, streams. And so there's all these different ways that you can get to that point. And really, it
Yeah,
ultimately is returning to your heart, right? Coming
yeah,
back home, as you said.
absolutely.
So whatever path or means you take to get there is
Yeah.
as it should be for you. So that's cool. I want to talk a little bit about you have a
Yeah.
Facebook group. And so I'd love for you to share with the listeners. It's Fox Den Energetics, which I think is a fun play on your name, of course. So tell the
Yes.
listeners, what do you share on there?
What is it?
Yeah, what are
Sure.
you talking about? All of that.
Absolutely. So let me for the listeners who don't know, because on this little Zoom it only has my first name. My last name is Fox. And I live on the top of a mountain. So I decided to call my group an energetics, of course, because it's energy, but I call it Fox Den because it's coming home. Where do the little foxes live? They live in the den. So, and what do you think about when you say everybody's getting together in the den? It's a collection, it's a community, it's coming home. And so I called it Foxed In Energetics because it's my little home space where I invite all my peeps. Come on in the den, let's hang out a little bit. And so what goes on in that Facebook group is I usually go in a couple times a week and I make different posts. Sometimes I make journal prompt posts like, hey, here's the energy for today. It's an invitation to do blah, 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 whatever the energy is. And then I'll make a few questions like, knowing this now, the energy is inviting you to consider whatever the thing is for the day. And then I'll throw a few questions like, what do you think about that? Tell me what you think about that. So I do a little bit of that. Sometimes I just go in and talk about whatever the energy for the month. It's a little numerology and a little life stories. Sometimes I just go in and I will either do videos about some event that I've experienced, something that happened to me, whatever, over the weekend or at work, and it brought to light some aha awareness for myself that gave me an opportunity to learn something, either about myself or about a situation. And it's sort of just like where I go to kind of share a little more one on one. Even though it's a group, it's kind of one on one to me. I really feel like it's like we're all hanging out in the same space. Whereas the podcast, because it's a much broader audience, that's where I typically will do more either guest interviews where people can come in and share their story. And I also do something called Thursday Parking Lot Wisdom, which is sort of my, I don't know. I sit in my car in the parking lot at work early in the morning and just literally talk. I don't know. And I when I say I don't know, I got to be honest, I don't track it. I have no clue who's listening. I have no idea who's on there, who's not on there, which is good and bad in a way. It's different when I'm in the group because I know who's in my group. Like I'm very aware of who's in the group. I have no idea who's hanging out on Spotify. I don't know. I guess whoever needs to hear it. That's how I view it. I view the podcast as the people who need it are going to stumble over it or be told about it, and they're going to get out of it what they need to get out of it. Whatever episode they happen to click on, then that's the one they're supposed to be listening to. And there it is. So the group, the Facebook group, I made it private for a reason. So anybody who wants, just jump on and invite yourself and I'll open the door and let you in. It's private because I want the people in there to feel that they can say what they feel like saying and that it isn't like smattered all over social media because let's face it, sometimes it's not a nice space on social media. Again, that's a choice. Like I choose not to be involved with all the junk. Like I cherry pick what I want to be involved in. And so my world on social media is really kind of sweet actually, because I built it that way, you know? Like if you don't want your backyard trash, well, don't invite the neighbors who don't pick up their trash to your barbecue. I mean, it's really pretty straightforward, really, right? Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
too
I
funny.
agree with that. And I will for sure include the link to your podcast so the listeners can check it
Sure.
out because it is great. And I have caught a couple of the Thursday parking lot thoughts, and that's fun. I love it. It's sort
They're
of like you
fun.
just whatever like strikes you in the moment is
Yeah,
what you're sharing.
yeah,
And you're absolutely right. Like the person who needs to hear this message is going to stumble on it in one way or another. I love it. And then your Facebook group as well. I'll include the information so the listeners can check that
sure.
out and then
Absolutely.
join, if they wish.
Sure.
I think that's cool. So, have you seen transformations for the people who are participating in it? maybe even for yourself, like transformations from the group experience.
In the group?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen people who I kinda know were sort of what I like to call the lurkers, the wallflowers, like, I know they're there, but they don't necessarily say much, and every now and then, they'll say something that tells me they're thinking about something, or something's shifting, or something's changing, or they'll say, "Oh, I went and did this thing, I never thought I would do that, but you gave me the confidence to try," that kind of thing. So they're like these little wins, and again, I think people take away what they need to from it. Similar to the book, the book that's out on Amazon. It's called Activating the Divine Human. I'm a co-author, so I'm not the only writer, but it's myself and 11 other gals, and we wrote a narrative, so 11 different chapters, and there's an intro with the publisher, and it's really a lovely, lovely, lovely book. And the beauty of the book is you could literally like just peel it open anywhere you want, and you're going to get something really amazing out of it. And that's kind of how I feel. All of this works for me. I hate to say it. I don't really work very hard at this, okay? Because I feel like if I have to work too hard, it's not very fun. And at my stage of life, I'm like, kind of like Ben and Jerry's, like if it's not fun, why do it? I don't I don't want to not have fun. So if I'm not having a good time, I'm not going to do it. So, the podcast is a blast. Like this is a blast for me. And the group is so fun, and I do numerology for people, and I love that. It's like it's like searching in the puzzle. It's just so fascinating to me. Yeah, there's just so many different ways to explore. And it's just the potential for making a change, not just for yourself, but when you change yourself, you change somebody else because we're all in it. So something great happens to you. What do? Something good happened to you today, right? So you go and you tell your girlfriend, "Oh my God, you won't believe what happened to me today." Now you tell her, she goes and tells somebody else, something gets said. You've now tapped into 2 or 3 lives in your one story. Who knows who you're changing a life for? I don't know, including yourself. And so every interaction, every event, I'm like, wow, this could be something really, this is just like the big prize. You just never know. It's just so good. I just, I wake up every morning and I'm like, wow, I can't believe this is my life. Right? I mean, I go to work
That's
like everybody else. I do. I'm up at 4:30 in the morning. I don't retire till 8:30 at night. That's a long day. But hey, it's a gift. I'm good. Really good.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Mielle, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing that reminder that life is a gift. It really, really is a gift, and that we get
Yeah.
another day to explore and learn and try and do and be. And all of that is really amazing.
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing that. And you touched a little bit briefly there on your book. And so you
Yeah.
as a co-author in this multi-author book. And so tell us for your chapter, what is it that you kind of are speaking on specifically?
So my chapter is called to be the change, you have to see the change, or to see the change, you have to be the change. To see the change, you have to be the change, right? So basically, it's like if you want to see it, you got to do it. Like get it right on the inside if you want to see it on the outside. It's kind of the same thing, except my chapter really sort of gives you the nitty gritty story of all the trials and tribulations, and what did I learn and what did I not learn, and when was my like ding ding, like stop screwing around and get on with it, because you only have the one ride of the merry-go-round. Cut it out. And for me, that moment occurred. I'd had a lot of little moments, but the big one that was like holy smoke was my brother took ill very suddenly and died very suddenly. And it was like, I mean, it was rough. It was really rough, and I sat with him through the whole thing, and it was brutal. And when I got home from that, and I had a couple other members go within like this a year or 2 years, but his was like really pivotal for me. And it really made me realize, like, one, you can choose it. You can choose to get sucked down the hole or not. It really, truly is a choice. So when people say, "Oh, I had a bad childhood and I had this and that," I don't disregard that. I don't dishonor that you had a difficult upbringing, or had trauma or what. I'm not saying that didn't happen, because it does happen. It did happen. But when you when you grow up, you get to decide, do you want to change it, or do you want to just live in that very ugly, uncomfortable comfort zone because you're afraid? And so at the end of the day, there's two four-letter words here. One is fear and one is love. And every single day, you make a bajillion decisions every single day. You either make them from fear or you make them from love. There's no in between. There's no halfway. It's A or it's B. So I'm at a place where I don't want to live in fear. I don't want that. I'm done. Don't want it, seen it, saw it. Nope, 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 nope. So every time I catch myself, oh, can I do it? Oh, is it okay? Oh, am I going to be liked? Like all these things that I stop and I say, wait a second. Let's just really pare this down and decide, where do I want to make the choice? What do I want? I personally choose love. It's so much more fun.
Oh my gosh.
It's
Yes.
so much better.
Really,
Yeah.
you are 100% right. We do come at everything in our life, and we're either afraid or fearful of a decision or a direction or whatever, or we're going to go at it with love and try anyway, do it anyway, even if we're a little bit afraid. Go at it from love. I think that's amazing. So thank you for reiterating and sharing that with us again. Miel, I always love to have my guests share books or podcasts that they have found to be beneficial or influential for them. Is there some that you'd like to suggest for the listeners to check out?
Sure. So I do a little everything. I've got the stack of books on the bedside table because I tend to read 4 and 5 books at a crack because I never know how I'm going to feel. Like sometimes you want something really lousy and sometimes you want something really juicy, right? So for books, I'm actually reading a couple of books. I'm reading a book by Chris Lombard, and it's his story. It's about horses, but it's the story of how he really found his peace within himself through his journey with the horses over his lifetime. So it's kind of like
Mhm.
an autobiography sort of story. So that's really interesting. It's called Land of the Horses, I think is what the name of it is. I'm terrible with the names. And then I'm reading a book that is basically about what you have in your mind presents in your body. So it's all
Mhm.
about the biochemistry of how your thoughts and emotions are processed and where it shows up in your body, which of course the geek in me thinks that's really cool. Podcasts. I have a friend from Scotland who has just the most phenomenal podcast. I just love her to pieces. And it's called Whiskey Made Woman. So it's Reverend Bunny Loveshock. She's just got this great podcast. It's really good. Mike Posner. So I don't even know if you know who Mike Posner is, but he's like, Mr. Music superstar from the 90s or something. Not my music. I'm a little older than that, so not my kind of music. But anyhow, he's got a really great podcast, Mike Posner. And then the guy I think is just so hilariously great, and he's right up my alley for geekiness. His podcast is called Think Tank, and it's Robert Edward Grant, and he's really tuned into finding the direct science and mathematical references in the pyramids as they relate to Da Vinci's artwork. And what does that mean for where is humanity going? I mean, it's really esoteric, it's really deep, it's really geeky, and it's really good. That I have to take in small quantities because he's intense. But yeah, there's a few of them. There's a few of them that are just really, really good. There's one called something like Over and On with It. Great gal. She really is like, okay, she kind of like takes your questions, answers your stuff like why you're having difficulties, and is like, okay, so now it's time to be over and on with it. And I don't know, it's just interesting to me. So those are the podcasts that I catch.
Yeah,
Of course I catch your
excellent.
podcast too. I just
Thank
love the
you.
one you just had done. It was so
Oh,
good. It was really, really good. All about limiting beliefs. That was really good. Yeah,
well, thank you so much for those
sure.
recommendations, Miel. I will include those for the listeners. And my guest in the episode that's coming up also suggested On With It and Over It as a
Yeah,
podcast. So back to back recommendations there. So absolutely,
yeah.
let's all check that out because that sounds fantastic. Mielle, before we close out, I really would love for you to share where you are that the listeners can find you if they want to just see more of what you're working on, your journey, connect with you. How would they be able to do that?
Absolutely. I'm pretty much all over social media. Not as consistently as like the big influence, but I'm there. So Facebook and Instagram at Mielle Fox, Mielle Fox, 1X. There's the private Facebook group, Foxden Energetics. The website has the same name, foxdenenergetics.com. The podcast is on all the listening platforms, including Apple and Spotify and YouTube, and that's Energy of the Untamed Heart. You can DM me. You can email me. I mean, I'm everywhere. Like, you can't not find me. I'm there. And I'd love to
Awesome.
chat with anyone. Yeah,
Cool.
it's good.
I will include all that information in the show notes for the listeners to make it super easy to find you. But yes, thank you for sharing all of that. I love it. And again, Mielle, this has been fantastic. I've so enjoyed this conversation. I knew I would, and it has just been amazing. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Before we close out, is there anything that you want to share, lastly with the listeners that you haven't maybe said already that they should know?
I would just say transformation is an inside job, and don't be afraid to do it, because the results on the other side are beyond anything you could possibly begin to imagine.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. Way to close it out. That's amazing. Thank you again, Mielle, for your time. I so appreciate it and joining us and sharing all this tremendous information with all of us. Thank you. All
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
right, well, we'll talk more soon. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.